This is a wish list of activists, is what it is.
Well, this guy that just got appointed, it says the Commerce Clause, if any money that changes hands anywhere in the country affects commerce, therefore it's under the jurisdiction of the Commerce Clause. That's the guy that Obama just put in this position.
Right.
Well, that's well past activists. That is a revolution against rule of law. And that's a colossal power grab.
Right. Well, it's just in the health care bill.
And he says it's settled law, and it's baloney. It's not settled law. That's what leftist judges say.
And that's exactly the same thing with the health care bill, with the individual mandate, in that a person making a decision not to do something is activity. It's irrational is what it is, and outside of being unconstitutional.
We're talking with Congressman Tom Latham, and if you have questions and comments about any of this, join us at 284-1040 or 800-469-4295. Back in a moment.
The deals.
Shake that.
Tom Latham is here. Congressman Latham is going to go back to work after his Hawaiian vacation.
What?
No, it's somebody's Hawaiian vacation. I'm sorry. And you're going to introduce some legislation. What do you intend for it?
Well, that's what I'd love to have your listeners give us some suggestions as to
what to call this thing?
What to call it. I think, Congress do its job, bill, whatever, but I'm sure there's very creative people out there that have minds that...
We're going to market this. We need, because any good legislation needs marketing. It needs positioning. It needs to say what it's. No Child Left Behind sounded so innocuous, but the stuff like that, the Freedom Act, which the stuff like that. But this, we want it to actually say what you intend it to do,
right?
And you want help from listeners on how to name this,
right?
And the purpose of which would be, if you don't do your job, we cut your salary or cut your staff or whatever it is.
And we cut off your money until you do your job. That's for sure.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. So.
And it's the Senate has not passed a budget. Now this would be 3 years. The Senate hasn't even attempted to pass a budget with $15 trillion in debt, and we have no blueprint for spending.
What's the upside? Is that a tactic, or they just can't? Or
they don't. Harry Reid wants to protect his members from taking difficult votes, and that's all it is. And when you get into a debate on the budget, there are some really tough amendments oftentimes.
So rather than decide, they decide not to decide.
You just punt. And that's what Harry Reid has done, is decided we're going to protect our members. Politics is more important than actually doing our job, and so we're not going to do our job.
All right. Congressman Tom Latham is actually inviting. Most self-destructive thing I've ever seen a politician do. He wants your assistance to how to name the act that makes these varmints do their job. 284-1040 or 800. I know we've got some really twisted listeners. You were about
very creative.
That's what I said, creative.
Yes.
And you were about to be the beneficiary of their expertise.
Terrific.
Let's go right to the phone lines, beginning with Jeff. Good morning, Jeff.
Good morning, Jan.
Hi.
Good morning, Congressman Latham.
Good morning.
I have a question. It's a little off topic of what you guys have been talking about. I'm not sure if Congressman Latham's familiar with the Mexican cross-border trucking program. That program was defunded twice under the Bush administration because Mexico drivers could not comply with our safety standards.
Yes.
And under the Obama administration released recently, it was approved. I want to know if there are any plans to defund the program again, since Mexico has still not been able to comply with our regulations.
Well, certainly, Ray LaHood, the Secretary of Transportation, had worked several years trying to get some type of agreement. It's under NAFTA that this is supposedly allowed. It is something that what they're trying to do is make sure that the trucks coming in here are inspected, they're safe, and that's, again, under NAFTA, this thing is something they were supposed to do to get an agreement. Now, there's still great concern that I have as far as whether these trucks are, in fact, safe, whether the drivers are have the ability to drive on U.S. highways and to do it in a safe manner. It's something that we're going to be looking at very, very closely. I think it's an issue that will be addressed in the highway reauthorization bill that is coming up and hopefully will be passed soon this year. But it is a huge issue, one of safety in the U.S., and certainly when you look at some of the contraband that can be brought across the border, it's something that we've got to make sure that before any of this would ever happen, that inspections are done properly of the vehicle and the cargo, and to make sure that that driver's qualified.
Absolutely. I mean, my biggest concern was we have this agreement with Canada, but we also have reciprocity with Canada where we can actually go into Canada without having to worry about our trucks getting hijacked, shot,
right?
Versus Mexico, which is on the State Department's list of places to stay away from. So
exactly,
it seems like an unfair agreement to me.
Right. No, I appreciate it very much, and we're going to be looking at it very, very closely to make sure that anything that's done is done to the best interests of this country.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. This is Ted. Good morning, Ted.
Hi, Tom. I have a question about this newly passed defense bill that it seems like if the administration gets a wild hair and wants to call someone a terrorist, they can just call them a terrorist and perhaps even incarcerate that individual for any length of time that they would so desire without that individual being able to get into a court of law or any other judicial procedure. What do you know about that?
Well,
I'll just hang up and listen here.
All right. Thank you, Ted. This was a huge issue that we dealt with the Defense Authorization Bill, of great concern to many of us, that in fact that someone that the administration, the Defense Department could deem to be a suspect terrorist in the United States, whether they're a U.S. citizen or not, that they could be incarcerated without the rights of a U.S. citizen. We had an hour-and-a-half conference with the Republicans before this bill was passed to get the language changed, so there is no change in current law. Under that bill, there is no authorization for any U.S. citizen to be incarcerated without charges, and they have the normal rights of a U.S. citizen. So I appreciate your concern, but we were very, very concerned about the same thing, and the bill would not have passed. I wouldn't have voted for it if, in fact, that language hadn't been clarified.
Now, what was the language that was clarified?
Well, basically saying that even if you're a U.S. citizen in the United States, that you could be detained, arrested without charges, and held without your constitutional rights.
Right. And is that language still there?
No, it's not. It was removed. So there's no change in current law. But it would have been increased power for the administration, but was a huge debate that we had.
Well, I must have misunderstood, because I just have someplace a soundbite with the president saying, yes, we could still do that to you, but we won't.
Not, under the bill, they cannot. There is no expansion of the powers that are given. So any U.S. citizen still has their constitutional rights. There's no way that this bill usurps the rights of a U.S. citizen.
There's a lot of news stories floating around the internet to say the opposite.
There was the original language, and that's why we had that huge debate before the bill, and it was amended before it was the final passage to make sure that was clarified, that there was no expansion of power.
Also, in that appropriations bill, they refined and changed the military code of uniform code of justice to remove sodomy as one of the things for which you could be given a dishonorable discharge. Why was that in there? And why did it get approved?
Well, apparently because of the doing away with the don't ask, don't tell, and I think it was in the authorization bill, not in the appropriation bill. But it doesn't. That part doesn't matter. But with the definition of sodomy, whether that type of relationship could be
it's not a relationship,
defined.
It's behavior.
Well, I'm just saying that defined that way, that that would fly in the face of this administration's push to do away with Don't Ask, Don't Tell.
If we get a new administration, that language go back and be revisited?
I think there would be a very good possibility of that happening, yes.
A brief timeout, back in a moment. Congressman Tom Latham is here. We're naming legislation. He's inviting people to name some legislation that would require Congress to actually do its job when it comes to the annual budget process, and it has some sanctions if they don't do it. He's asking for assistance and to put a name tag on such a thing. 284-1040 or 800-469-4295. Back in a moment.
The Salvation Army still needs your support. Mail your gift to Box 933, Des Moines 50304.
Congressman Tom Latham is here in the studio with us. He's running for re-election in a new district against Congressman Boswell. And he is suggesting, that is, Congressman Latham wants some help in naming a piece of legislation which he intends to introduce when they go back. I was going to go back, say back in session, but you're not out of session.
Technically, we are still in session.
Okay. Could you guys, well, no, I'm not going to chase that one. We got a couple of nominations. One, the Congressional Accountability Act would be one from an emailer. Another one is the Congressional Right to Work Act.
I like it.
Let's talk to Bruce. Good morning, Bruce.
Yes, I had the same suggestion, the Accountability Act.
Okay. That works for me. Have a government accountability office already there. All right, thank you, Bruce. Appreciate it.
That is a very good suggestion and one that we'll look at here, yes.
All right, and this is Dick. Good morning, Dick.
Good morning.
Hi, Dick.
I really like your proposal, Congressman, and thanks for taking my call, Jan. This isn't very creative, but everybody ought to understand sink or swim.
Well, I tell you what, if Congress doesn't do its job, it's going to be a matter of sink or swim for this country real soon. We just cannot continue to spend ourselves into oblivion. If we do nothing, we're going to be $25 trillion in debt in 10 years or more. And at that point, every dime that's paid in income taxes, the federal government will just go simply to service the interest on the debt.
And that's partly, Congressman, why I think of what I am. Half the people are underwater already, but the whole country's going to be underwater. And if the Congress and Senate doesn't do their thing, they're going to be sunk also.
Absolutely.
Hey, thank you, Dick. Appreciate it. Somebody says the line 'em up and shoot 'em act. I'm in that category, by the way. I wouldn't actually use that choice of weapon. I like the idea of pitchforks.
I love the creativity that you bring to the discussion, Jim. I really do.
I was hoping you were going to acknowledge my malicious nature, because really it absolutely is. This is Scott. Good morning, Scott.
Morning.
Hi.
How about the irresponsible delegate bill?
I think that is very appropriate. Certainly, people who are not being held responsible are being irresponsible. Scott, that's a very good suggestion.
Mine would be the Congressional Perforation Act. All right, this is Grant. Good morning, Grant.
Hey, sorry about the noise in here, but I got to be somewhere. Somebody's waiting on me.
All right.
I'm a truck driver also from Oklahoma, and with all due respect, I believe the congressman danced around the real question. The question is, if they do supposedly comply with the safety regulations, are you personally okay with the Mexican trucks coming up here and lowering freight rates and lowering wages?
The secretary in this agreement said that will not happen. Am I okay if that were to happen? No, absolutely. I would, and I chair the Transportation and HUD subcommittee on appropriations, and we would put a funding restriction in the bill so that they couldn't do the inspections to bring those trucks in here. If there is compliance, if there is not, it is part of NAFTA. It is part of a treaty that says that with the safety provisions put in place with the inspections, and it's not law, it's treaty, that was approved by the United States Senate and by the Congress and the President, that this is what would happen. But if, in fact, there was undercutting, if there were safety violations, whatever, I would be the first one to put restrictions in. We're going to monitor it very, very closely, like I said, and I think it'll be a huge debate with the reauthorization of the highway bill.
Having been in this business for almost 25 years, the real deal that wants to go on is the large trucking company.